Hello everyone and welcome to this self-knowledge course. Today we're going to see a very important topic because we're going to know the processes of evolution and involution that we as sparks go through in this physical manifestation, how we have been evolving and involuting through the different kingdoms of nature, and what's the purpose of all that. We are also going to learn about the law of revolution, which will allow us to get out of this mechanical wheel in which we find ourselves, rescuing all the wisdom that we have been acquiring. The objective of this topic is that we can clearly see why we come to this planet and how we can achieve that goal. If we don't get to that point in our life where we clearly understand what we are doing here, what is the purpose of existing, we will simply keep spinning on this wheel, known also as the wheel of samsara, repeating the same actions and making the same mistakes without even having the possibility of waking up. So let us first understand what are the laws of evolution and involution. Both laws are completely mechanical and always depend on each other. Everything happens according to these two laws. We see that everything begins, grows, decreases, and ends. Plants, animals, people, everything is born, evolves, until reaching a climax. Then they begin to get sick, to weaken, to get old, until one day they die. We can see, for example, a company that is formed, grows, reaches a peak of profitability, and eventually declines until it falls completely. And we can see even that in how the great and powerful civilizations that have existed have reached a peak in their evolution and have fallen in the same way. So we can see that nothing escapes these two laws. The important thing is that we know that our essence also goes through this process, being subjected to the mechanics of this universe. So let's see how we evolved through the four kingdoms of nature. The most common thing is that people believe that they are just their physical body, but certainly we are much more than that. This physical body is just a vehicle that our essence, which is our spirit, our consciousness, is now using to move in this dimension. That spirit, that consciousness, that what we really are, is that divine spark which once came from that source or God, or whatever you want to call it, which is also known as the sacred absolute sun. All the sparks come from the sacred absolute sun in search for its mastery or self-realization. That makes us know that we are here with a purpose, and that purpose is to obtain wisdom through all the experiences that we are going to live while we create the ego, going through the different kingdoms of nature. That is to say, we come to this physical manifestation to take a course, a master degree, to return to the source with wisdom once we have achieved our own self-realization. When the sparks leave the sacred absolute sun, they do so through one of the 7 rays of creation, and it is connected to the wheel of samsara. This wheel ascends in evolution led by Anubis and descends into involution led by Typhon. This spark has 3% of free consciousness and 97% of innocent and trappable essence, and it will enter the different kingdoms of nature to create the ego, in which this 97% of essence will be trapped. And there, in this wheel, 300,000 esoteric years are given to the spark to achieve self-realization. Those 300,000 esoteric years are represented in the formation of 3,000 souls. This means that we have the right to spin in this wheel 3,000 times, and in each turn we are going to create a soul through the different kingdoms of nature. And upon reaching the human kingdom in each cycle, we will have the right to have 108 existences or 108 human physical bodies. So that in one of those existences as humans, we decide to do the work of developing that soul and achieving self-realization. If we don't, we will lose that soul that we have created through that cycle by going through involution. And we will have to recreate a new soul by entering to a new spin on the wheel. If we do the calculation, one soul for each one of the 3,000 cycles and 108 human existences for each one of those souls, this is equivalent to 324,000 human physical bodies. That means that we are going, or that we have been given 324,000 opportunities as humans to awaken our consciousness and achieve self-realization. But it is important to know that not all sparks reach self-realization. Many remain hanging around on this process of evolution and involution until their opportunities run out without ever reaching that point of revolution, which leads them to awaken their consciousness and reach their self-realization. And all sparks have free will, and they are not bound to achieve victory. But there are three alternatives on this wheel. The first alternative is triumph, which is to achieve the intimate self-realization of the being in any one of these opportunities. The second alternative is failure, which is exhausting all opportunities without being able to awaken consciousness and returning to the absolute zone with only 3% of consciousness. And the third alternative is to renounce the will. This case is determined by the Divine Mother of a spark that doesn't have the strength to resist the pressure of the will. Then it is cleansed of the ego and returned to the absolute with the 3% of consciousness with which it went down under the same conditions as the unsuccessful spark. Now let's see the process of evolution in more detail. Once the spark is emanated from the sacred absolute sun, it enters the wheel through the mineral kingdom. In the mineral kingdom, our spark was connected to the physical body of an evolutionary mineral, such as a precious stone, a metal, or even a grain of sand. There, our soul was called a gnome or pygmy. This means that when we enter the wheel of samsara, our spark moves freely in the fourth dimension from nature, but our silver cord is connected to an evolutionary mineral to begin its learning process. Although we see inert minerals and we believe that they have no life, they are the physical body of a spark that is learning in that kingdom. This spark is assigned a first brain, which is the emotional brain. Therefore, it has the ability to feel simple emotions. It has no psychological defects yet, but it will begin to create them. The only duty that the spark has in this kingdom is to attend the school, where they are taught the different things corresponding to the mineral kingdom. Under these conditions, it will last thousands and even millions of years, forming its first defects. The first defects that they formed are those of disobedience to the gurus, devas of nature. Then they continue with those of antipathy, etc. When Anubis sees that the spark has already created enough defects, he transfers it to the vegetable kingdom. In this kingdom, our spark was connected to an evolutionary plant, according to the original ray to which we belong. For example, a towering and beautiful tree, or a tree or plant that provides food, a tree or flowering plant, a healing plant, etc., etc. There, our soul was called elemental. Its consciousness continues at 3% as it started, but evolves with the defects created earlier. Here, the spark is assigned a second brain, which is the motor instinctive sexual brain, which will allow them, in addition to the ability to feel basic emotions such as liking and disliking, now they will begin to develop the instinct to start recording those emotions of liking and disliking. So now it will create defects related to fear, sadness, pleasure, and pain. Now it will also have the ability to move slightly in search of sunlight and move its roots in search of more nutrients. It has to start fighting for its food, for light, against a parasitic plant, etc. In that fight, it creates new psychological defects, since it already feels pain and has to learn a lot from nature to become strong. And thanks to this brain, it will have the ability to reproduce. In this kingdom, that spark must learn everything about plants and their uses. And in fact, once we start to awaken our consciousness, we will begin to remember this knowledge that once we had, and we will know how to use plants for healing. When our guru saw that we had created enough defects, he disconnected us from the vegetable kingdom and connected us with the animal kingdom. In this kingdom, our soul was called anima, and it was connected to the physical body of an evolutionary animal. For example, a pure-blooded animal, a beautiful wild animal, or an animal that gives food. The spark maintains its 3% of consciousness and the two brains, the one of the plant kingdom, but now with more developed abilities. Now it is no longer planted in the same place. Now it can move to look for its own food and learn to defend itself from other animals, and it will develop all his animal instincts, such as fornication, violence, fear, etc. As it learns to survive in a wild environment, it will create more defects, new defects. After many years going through different species in this kingdom and creating many defects, the guru deva of that kingdom brings the spark to the human kingdom. In this kingdom, our spark is now called soul. Here, the spark receives a third brain, which is the intellectual brain. So now, in addition to the emotional brain and the motor instinctive sexual brain, we have a third brain that gives us the ability to reflect and judge our actions. Therefore, as human beings, we can gradually eliminate all the defects that we have been creating and rescue the wisdom that is trapped within them. Also, since we now have an upright spine, we can consciously direct our sexual energy through our spine to create our internal bodies. And also, we can develop love, consciously sacrificing ourselves for others. Therefore, it is in this kingdom where we have the opportunity to awaken our consciousness and achieve self-realization. In this kingdom, we will have the right to have 108 existences as humans, and that is to say, we have the right to be born and died 108 times in human physical bodies. The first time our silver cord was connected to a human physical body, it was in a baby born in a tribe, in a place far from civilization, where people were still connected with the nature from which they had just arrived. From the 108 existences as humans, we are going to have the first 54 the first 54 existences are going to occur in an evolutionary condition. But even so, the human being creates many psychological defects during this period. As these first 44 existences are finished, are completed, the evolution will be over and the involution will begin. Although he is still entitled to another 54 existences, but as a humanoid. But now, as a humanoid, the instinct puts the intellect at its service, and the soul or psyche quickly blakens. So he is completely filled with the ego in those 54 remaining existences. In any case, you still have the opportunity to wake up and seek your self-realization at any time during those 54 remaining existences. It's really a good idea to investigate in a conscious astral unfolding in which one of those existences we are currently in this cycle. See? And we can also investigate how many times we have turned this wheel. As we see here up to this point, the ego is always evolving. We will be creating more and more ego, and our consciousness will be more and more trapped and asleep. If we do not take advantage of our soul, we will lose it, since once our 108 existences as humans are exhausted without taking advantage of any of those opportunities to release all our energy and our consciousness from the ego and create the existential bodies of the being in order to achieve self-realization, we will enter the involution until the nature disintegrates the last one of the psychological aggregates and we achieve the second death. So now let's see what is exactly involution. Once the 108 existences as humans in a cycle are exhausted, without working on ourselves, our spark will be connected to an involutionary animal. The silver cord will be connected, for example, to a stray dog or a donkey that is forced to work all day, or a pest such as rats, cockroaches, etc., while our spark, contaminated with all this ego, to free itself from all this, will penetrate the 9 Dantesque circles, from where it will not leave until nature finishes disintegrating all the defects. Here we will receive various animal bodies, and later our spark will connect to several bodies of involutionary plants. Thus, we will go down through the kingdoms, and finally we will arrive at the involutionary mineral kingdom, where our spark will be connected to a decomposing mineral. In the involution, nature will disintegrate all psychological defects, and we will achieve the second death. This process can last thousands or millions of years, and in the end, our spark will come out totally clean of ego, with the 3% of consciousness, but having lost the created soul and all the wisdom acquired in that turn of the wheel. And it will connect, or it will be connected back to the evolutionary mineral kingdom to start a new spin on the wheel to create a new soul. If we reflect on this, we will deduce that it is absurd to believe that we can aspire to constant evolution, that we can just by letting time pass by hope that we are going to take a quantum leap, or that we will awaken our pineal gland, or that we will be more conscious people without working on our own psychology, without paying karma for all the damage that we have been causing existence after existence. It is absurd to expect that different things will start to happen if, as humanity, we continue doing the same and making worse mistakes every day. We might believe that by having more technology, greater access to information, we are evolving, when internally we are more and more degenerate, more perverse, and more cruel. It's just watching our planet and seeing how we are destroying it, destroying all its resources, how it's declining the critical thinking, art, philosophy, psychology, etc. If we observe ourselves internally, if we manage to wake up to see our own internal decadence, we will realize that we are not in an evolution process, but in an involution process, and that we urgently need to make an internal revolution. Excuse me. Because only through the conscious revolution is human regeneration possible. And it is possible to free ourselves from this wheel of constant deaths and rebirths. So, what is the revolution? The revolution of the consciousness is a job that each one of us must do to achieve our own change. This change is made through the three factors of the revolution of consciousness. The first factor is psychological death, which consists of discovering our psychological defects through self-observation, judging the defects until understanding them, and eliminating those observed defects with the help of our particular divine mother. With psychological death, the trapped consciousness is liberated from defects. The second factor is the spiritual birth, which is to begin to make a wise use of the sexual creative energy to create the existential bodies of the being. It is the sexual union between man and woman without spilling the sexual creative energy. And with the spiritual birth, the liberated consciousness is fixed to the spinal cord. The third factor is the sacrifice for humanity, which consists of delivering knowledge to humanity disinterestedly, so that each person who receives it can do their own work. With the sacrifice for humanity, love awakens. In this way, we liberate ourselves from the wheel of samsara, from the processes of evolution and involution to which we have been tied for a long, long time. Thus, we achieve the self-realization of our being. And well, this has been the lecture for today. Thank you all for being here. And if you have any question, you can leave it in the comments. Join us in the next topic, in which we will talk about the infradimensions. We will see in detail how these infradimensions are subdivided and the work that we have to do in our internal infradimensions, since from these infradimensions will come out the light and fire, the wisdom and love, the raw materials to do this work of self-realization. So, thank you very much and see you.